Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Matt from Pinnacle Chiropractic, your local pediatric family prenatal chiropractic office here in Lakewood Ranch, Sarasota, Bradenton, Florida. And today is episode 11 of Pinnacle's Perspective, our weekly healthcast. Welcome back to episode 11 of Pinnacle's Perspective, your weekly healthcast. And in today's episode, we're really going to talk about the hidden causes behind anxiety, ADHD, sensory processing challenges, autism, challenges like that we see very, very commonly in a lot of the children that we take care of in our office. That's really what we started our practice on, was seeing children with a lot of kids with those challenges. And so now we've grown our practice to where we see a wide range of different challenges within children, and then as well as prenatal patients and some adult patients and family members of the kids that we take care of. But really, our kind of core of our practice is taking care of kids that have that anxiety, have those sensory challenges, those sensory struggles, things like ADHD, ADD, things like that. And so a lot of people want to point to one cause of a lot of these challenges that we're seeing become more and more common in children. They are becoming more and more common, but they aren't normal things. And so a lot of the times we have common warning signs when children are younger that kind of can tell us that things aren't right and that they might develop into sensory struggles, ADHD, anxiety, when they get a little bit older and they go through that growth and development process. And so, like I said, in today's society, right now, a lot of people are wanting to point to certain things and specific things to what the hidden cause behind these challenges are. But I'm really here to break that myth. It's not just one thing that is leading to these chronic childhood conditions. It's really a multitude of factors that go into play in each case, and each kid has a little bit different of those causative factors, a little bit different of those things that contributed to those challenges eventually showing up in a lot of the children with those struggles. So really, when we look at this, we want to look at the brain and the nervous system. The brain and the nervous system is that master control system of the body. And so with a lot of anxiety, sensory struggles, and autism, ADHD, the brain is not working properly and the nervous system is not working properly. So we want to look at, okay, what is causing the brain and that nervous system not to be working the way it's supposed to be working? And so when we look at this, it really boils down to stress. Right now we're seeing, especially in today's climate with COVID crisis happening, we're going to start to see more and more of these conditions in children probably pop up further down the road, maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, multiple years from now, because of the stress that we're encountering as a society and really as a world in the world right now with the COVID crisis. So, like I said, the really main culprit that we point to is stress. And the more stress that these kids undergo early on in their lives, when their brain, the nervous system is developing the most rapidly within the womb, and then within those first 2 to 3 years of life, the more that nervous system and that brain gets stuck into stress mode. So stress gets stuck on in their nervous system. And so, like I said, each kid has a little bit different of those different stressors going on. So we see a high prevalence in kids that are adopted or through the foster program that have a lot of sensory ADHD like struggles because they underwent a lot of stress early on. Their mom might have been addicted to drugs while she was pregnant, putting a lot of chemical stress into the body while baby was developing, that brain and nervous system was developing and being taken away from their birth mom right at birth. That can stress out that child's nervous system really early on. But we've kind of narrowed it down to a common theme, the most common type of stressors that we really see. And this is really through listening to moms and hearing their stories about their pregnancy, about their labor delivery, how the child was early on in those first couple years of life, because that really is what tells us the biggest picture of what type of stressors they underwent. So when we look at that, we look at those stressors on the brain and nervous system of that rapidly developing brain and nervous system of the baby. And so when we look at the most common things that we see, not every case is going to have all of these ingredients or all of these stressors, but the more of them that we can kind of find and add up, the more we know that brain and nervous system of these children is stuck into that stress mode, stuck into that fight or flight mode, or that gas pedal mode of the nervous system. In some of our other videos, we talk a lot about the science behind our care, and we'll dive into a little bit of the science behind our care after we go over the most common stressors that we see in our practice and in our office. But it will be very, very brief. You can attend some of our webinars and workshops to learn more about the in-depth science behind our care and how we can help. But today we'll just go over a really brief synopsis of our the science behind how we can help. So when we really look back to these common stressors, the first common stressor that we see is really during the pregnancy and pre-pregnancy period. So mom could have had fertility challenges where she had issues getting pregnant. She might have had to be on fertility medications or drugs to get pregnant. A lot of the times when we see fertility cases in our office, it's usually an indicator that mom's nervous system or dad's nervous system, because it takes two to conceive, was really very stressed out. And so that makes for a challenge of getting pregnant, because if mom or dad's nervous system is super stressed out, in a super stressed out state, then the body's not going to be ready to make a baby, which just creates more stress on especially mom's body going through the physical changes of pregnancy. And so the fertility challenges is one of the common ingredients that we see as one of the first kind of indicators of some stress starting. And then as we go through and look into the pregnancy period, we can see other things pop up in pregnancy that are common kind of indicators that there is some stress going on. So it could be just a lot of stress that mom's going under, that is under during her pregnancy. So if her stress hormones, cortisol levels are elevated, she's sharing that blood supply with that developing baby within her womb, that brain and nervous system is going to get those same stress signals, those stress hormones, and start to wire that baby's nervous system into a little bit more of a stressed out state rather than a rest and relaxation state that we want it to be in. And so that stress during the pregnancy is a very common ingredient that we see in a lot of the kids that we take care of with ADHD, ADD, sensory challenges, anxiety, autism, things like that. And so it can also be other warning signs there. Mom could have a lot of bad pregnancy symptoms, a lot of nausea that extends past that first trimester. It could be a lot of severe pregnancy-related symptoms, which once again just is an indicator that mom's body was already a little bit stressed out, in that stressed out state before she got pregnant, and that stress of those physical changes of pregnancy created even more stress on her body. And so some of those increased pregnancy symptoms can definitely be an indicator as well that there's some stress going on in mom's life. And then really when we look past pregnancy, we go into the next kind of group or phase, and that's going to be the labor and delivery process itself. So this is a very, very common thing that we see, a very, very common stressor that we see in our office that happens with the majority of kids that we have under our care that have sensory ADHD, anxiety, autism like struggles. So the first one is really going to be some sort of birth intervention. So it could be a forceps delivery or a vacuum extraction or a C-section delivery, some sort of birth intervention that uses a lot of force to this upper neck area, the head and neck area of the baby. And we'll talk about in other videos why that area is so important neurologically, but really to kind of sum it up is the brainstem lives there, and the brainstem controls a wide range of functions for our body. And so when we have that excessive force to that upper neck with a birth intervention like a C-section, a forceps extraction, a vacuum extraction, we create a lot of stress and tension and physical stress and tension on that upper neck, on that brainstem, neurologically rich area of the spine. So that starts to wire baby's nervous system a little bit deeper into that stressed out state. And so it doesn't always have to be birth interventions either. We see plenty of kids that were born natural vaginal deliveries, but within the womb as well. This kind of goes back to the pregnancy, but baby could have been restricted where baby didn't have a ton of room to move around within that womb. They could have been malpositioned where they weren't basically head down. They were maybe transverse some of the time, or they were butt down some of the time, breech positioning. And so that kind of puts more stress, physical stress on that baby's spine and on that baby's body as well. And then we have other vaginal deliveries or other complications that can happen with vaginal deliveries, like a cord wrapped or a deceleration or acceleration of the heart rate, where that labor and delivery process, something just doesn't go exactly as planned. A lot of things can happen during that labor and delivery process that are really out of our control, out of the OB's control, out of mom's control. But some sort of major stressor like that plays a role in that developing nervous system of that baby. And so after that labor delivery process, like I said, that's probably the biggest area that we see the most stress in a lot of the kids that we take care of. After that, that's when we really start to see a lot of these kids exhibited early warning signs when they were babies. So it could be a wide range of early warning signs. The more of these early warning signs, the deeper and the stronger the indication that that nervous system's in that stressed out state, stressed out mode. So things like colic and reflux and a lot of spit up or projectile vomiting. It could be difficulty breastfeeding or favoring one side, one breast more so than the other, not being able to turn their head a certain way, torticollis or misshapen head. All of those can be early warning signs and indicators that there is some stress on the body, stress on the nervous system of these developing babies. And so, like I said, really the more of those warning signs that child has, the more the stronger the indication that that brain and nervous system is going to be in deeper of that fight or flight mode. And so I always like to say that not every kid that has colic and reflux is going to grow into sensory challenges and autism and ADHD and stuff like that. But what we know is seeing a lot of the kids with autism, ADHD, anxiety, sensory challenges, a lot of them, the majority of them, a very high percentage of them had the colic and reflux, had projectile vomiting and early indicators like that. So we know that definitely tells us that there is something going on with their brain and their nervous system early on. And so when we see those kids grow and develop, a lot of the times, if that nervous system's in that stressed out state, stressed out mode, challenges are just going to keep on popping up, essentially. So the pediatricians aren't wrong in saying that the babies are going to grow out of colic and reflux, which is obviously the case as they grow and develop. Usually most babies, most kids are going to grow out of that colic and reflux. But we see with those kids that have a lot of stress on their brain, on their nervous system, they grow into more challenges as they go through that growth and development period. So a lot of the kids that we take care of with anxiety, sensory, ADHD struggles, they're going to go from that colic, reflux, fussy baby that isn't sleeping very well to that toddler that's always getting sick with ear, nose, throat stuff. So chronic ear infections, they might have to have tubes in their ears. They might get a lot of strep throat or sore throat. or some kids it'll go all to their respiratory system or their upper respiratory system where they have to have nebulizer treatments. They have a lot of coughing and wheezing. Every time they get sick, it seems like it goes right to their chest. Some sort of those ear, nose, throat things that happen on a chronic basis. We're not just talking about just a one-time thing. We're talking about where these kids literally get sick over and over and over again. They get over one thing and then they catch the next thing. Same thing goes with like talking about kids that go off to daycare. Some parents will just chalk it up, well, they're going to daycare, so they're going to get sick all the time because the kids are just always sharing the germs around, which that might be partly true. They definitely are going to increase their chances of getting sick. But if that brain and nervous system is in a stressed out state, a stressed out mode, that immune function is suppressed, it is lowered. So they are going to get sick a lot easier versus a kid that or a child that has a strong brain and nervous system, low stress on it. Generally speaking, their immune system is going to be very, very strong. They're going to be able to fight things off easily and not get sick over and over and over and over again. So that chronic ear, nose, throat stuff, really in that toddler stage, is really kind of another warning sign that that nervous system, that brain is in more of that sympathetic fight or flight state, in that fight or flight mode. And then the kind of last phase is really when they reach that age of 3, 4, 5 years of age, is when we start to see a lot of the sensory ADHD, autism, and anxiety things start to really show up. So this could be a lot of behavioral issues where they have extreme meltdowns, extreme tantrums that are a little bit over the top and over and above of what you would typically see with most children that age. So obviously around that age, children are going to have some tantrums and some meltdowns, but we're talking about huge explosions of emotions where they're from 0 to 100 in the snap of a finger, and there's no calming them down. It's going to take them quite a while to calm themselves down. It's really that brain goes deeper into that fight or flight mode, and it's going to take them a while to get out of that fight or flight mode. And so that's when we really start to see those challenges pop up, especially when kids are going off to school or daycare for the first time. That's when they're going to start, parents are going to start getting those notes home that their child's not behaving or not getting along with other children, or they're just having issues in that environment. And so when we look at what is the true cause behind this, hopefully now you can see the big picture is it's a lot more than pointing to one exact thing. It's a combination of things that really stress that nervous system and that brain out and stick it into that fight or flight mode. And it's a little bit different for every single child that comes into our office. They have different stressors that they underwent, but a lot of them, like what I said earlier, they have and exhibit those early warning signs that the nervous system's in that stressed out state, in that stressed out mode. And so when we really talk about all the different types of cases that we see, we love seeing the cases in this lane because really we're helping their quality of life. And when a child has sensory struggles, ADHD, autism, anxiety, a lot of those issues, because it's due to the brain being into more of that fight or flight state, into more of that fight or flight mode, stress mode, a lot of those issues aren't just going to magically go away as they get older. They're just going to continue to grow into more challenges. So what we typically see is those sensory ADHD kids usually grow into teenagers that become more depressed. They become more withdrawn. They don't want to socialize. They don't get out with their friends. They just become that depressed, withdrawn type of case. And so when we talk about these sensory anxiety, ADHD issues, it's really best, the younger the child we can get to them. We'd love to get to the colic reflux babies. We'd love to get to the kids that have the chronic ear, nose, throat stuff going on before all the sensory anxiety, ADHD things show up, because then we really can get that brain into that more rest and relaxation mode of the nervous system and help them grow and develop to limit those challenges. There's not always every time that we're going to be able to completely eliminate those challenges, the younger the child, the better the chance that a lot of those challenges can go completely away. But we're going to help them have a much higher quality of life and be able to adapt to the different stressors that they're under as they grow and develop. Because as children, especially once they go off to school, they're going to have a lot of stressors and challenges that come at them, from social stress with their peers, through academic stress with school, through teacher stress. All of those things are going to be stressors on their body. And if we can calm that brain and nervous system down, then we can help them adapt to those stressors in a much better way. And so, to really briefly recap the science behind our care, really it's kind of a few-step process of what happens, how the spine affects the nervous system. We go into a lot more detail, like I said, in some of our webinars and workshops. But essentially, we have a big misalignment fixation of the spine that occurs. And so that's when the spine becomes kinked, jammed, bent, or stuck. And a lot of the times we point back to that birth intervention as a big cause of that, because of the excessive amount of force in a forceps delivery, a vacuum extraction, a cord wrapped around the neck, a C-section delivery. That misalignment fixation of the spine, what it then does is it alters the input to the brain. It basically it replaces this proprioceptive input to the brain, which is calming input to the brain, and replaces it with nociceptive, noisy, stressful input to the brain. So that misalignment fixation of the spine replaces that calming input to the brain with more of a noisy, stressful input to the brain, which then sticks that nervous system into more of that stress, the sympathetic mode, the gas pedal mode, the stress mode, the fight or flight mode of the nervous system. And then it even can go further to what's called dyskinesis, where it alters the energy output as well from the child. This is the super hyperactive kids that are nonstop 1,000,000 miles a minute. So with our care, we are able to stimulate the rest relaxation mode of the nervous system, unwind a lot of that neuromuscular tension within the spine, and that's going to allow that brain and nervous system to be in a much more relaxed state, which then allows the body to adapt to stress a lot more. So that, in a nutshell, is the science behind our care. Like I said, we go into much more detail with that in some of our webinars and some of our workshops. So once again, when we look at kind of recapping back, there is no single cause to ADHD, anxiety, autism, things like that. But what we know is there is stress that those children endured early on in their life, when that brain, that nervous system was developing very, very rapidly, that stuck their nervous system into more of that fight or flight state, into more of that stress mode. So hope you guys enjoyed this 11th episode of Pinnacle's Perspective. This is, like I said, one of my favorite cases to take care of are the children with these struggles, and really the foundation and the backbone of what our practice was built upon were these cases. And so there's something that we have a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge taking care of, and we see amazing, amazing changes and results with a lot of these kids through our consistent and regular chiropractic care. So if you're interested in setting up an appointment in our office, you can give our office a call at 941-822-8828. To recap that number again, 941-822-8828. And you will be able to set up your initial appointments with Jen or Claire, and they'll be able to help you and explain kind of how our process works. So normally those first visits to get started are $250. Right now with the COVID crisis, we are offering those half off at $125. Normally we only offer that price at our in-person workshops, which right now we're not doing, but we will be having one in August coming up. So if you follow our page, you'll be able to see the events that we are creating in August, which will be some live in-person workshops where we'll make sure everybody's socially distanced, wearing masks, and have everything appropriate for the COVID guidelines for that workshop. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, guys, I'm Dr. Matt. Be well.